Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another Planning Committee meeting. It's good to see so many people here this afternoon. Welcome to you all, and to the speakers, especially who have come this afternoon. My name is Nicholas Wright. I'm chair of this committee. I'd like to introduce Vice Chairman Councillor Andy Dyke and Nick Dawkes. Committee Administrator on my left, Faith Hobbs. Senior Lawyer Rachel Cherrington-Walker, on my right. Kieran Power, Head of Development Management. Carl Brace, Development Manager. And together with Planning Officers Matt McConville, Robert Smith and Judy Morgan, who you'll see this afternoon. And also Assistant Manager South Worcestershire Land Drainage Partnership, Andrew Fowle. And sitting next door to him, Fran Davis, who's the Engineering Assistant for Flood Risk. I think we have somebody from Highways, hopefully. Nigel Gorski, I'd like to welcome you on behalf of this Planning Committee. Thank you for coming. And just to make some housekeeping points, there are, in case of a fire, if the debate gets too hot, that is, I'm looking at the committee, there's exits here, exits where you came in, both doors. Thank you. This is being webcast on YouTube, and there will be a break when it's convenient. Thank you. Also, on item 8, Councillor Hannah Robson is speaking outside the committee as ward member, and on item 9, Linda Robinson is speaking outside the committee.
It's item 8, sorry, for Councillor Hannah Robson.
I said 8, yeah.
Sorry.
I said it, yeah, 8. Thank you. Could I have any apologies, please, Faith?
Thank you, Chairman. I have apologies of absence from Councillors John Clatworthy and Adrian Hardman, and Councillor Gregory Wilkins is substituting for Councillor John Clatworthy.
Thank you. And are there any declarations of interest? Thank you.
Yes, I have declarations of interest for item 8 from Councillors Rob Adams, Linda Robinson, Margaret Rowley. They have declared a non-pecuniary interest in the Speaker. No, beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. No, for item 8, I have apologies of absence from Rob Abson and from Councillor Hannah Robson. Jim Hayward is known to them. And for next item, let me start again. Beg your pardon.
Declarations of interest. It's
Right,
been a hard day so far.
so far. Right, I have the following declarations of absence. For item 8, interest. Sorry, what did I say? Sorry, declarations of interest.
It may be absent as well, but this is declarations of interest.
I have the following declarations of interest. Item 8, Councillors Rob Adams, Linda Robinson, Margaret Rowley have declared a non-pecuniary interest. The Speaker, Neil Pearce, is known to them as he is a former planning officer at the council. And also Rob Adams and Hannah Robson, Jim Hayward is known to them. For item 9, Councillors Rob Adams, Linda Robinson, Margaret Rowley have declared a non-pecuniary interest. Neil Pearce is known to them as a former planning officer at the council. And also for item 9, Councillor Margaret Rowley and Councillor Adams, Mark Broughton-Taylor is known to them. That's a non-pecuniary interest. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Thank you very much. Are there any more declarations of interest? No? Thank you. Now, you've all had the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of January. Are there any points need changing in the minutes? No. Can I therefore have a proposal? The minutes are a true record of the event. Councillor Adams, and seconded by Councillor Sims. Thank you. I say this every time we have a meeting. The background sort of to planning committees and when it reaches here basically, sorry if you could, basically a lot goes into these planning applications, which you probably don't see, and I'm speaking to people who've come very kindly come this afternoon. When it arrives, it goes through, the case officer obviously takes it on. It goes to the National Planning Policy Framework, the Planning Practice Guidance, the Waste Course Strategy, the South Worcestershire Development Plan, neighbourhood plans, etc. And you'll see these on the case officer's report on the web if you've looked, and there's a whole load of agencies which require, as you well know, answers before it becomes into this committee. So a great deal goes into it. And it is a balance. Planning, it always is a balance, and I'm afraid that sometimes it doesn't go the way you want it to go. But all I ask you is that you respect the views of this committee and their decisions they make, whether it's to your liking or not. But it is a long process, which, as you know, arrives here today for a decision. For those who've been before, especially speakers, it'll be limited to 3 minutes for town or parish council, 3 minutes for those objecting, 3 minutes for those in support of the application. And it is 3 minutes. We do time it, and I'm afraid if you go on talking too long, we will stop you. That is, if you go on for more than a second or two over 3 minutes. So the way it works is the planning officer will describe the proposal and verbally update the committee. The parish council will then be allowed to speak, will be invited to speak, and then the objectors will speak, and then the applicant or the agent or supporters of the scheme. Then the visiting ward member will have questions, and the ward member will address the committee, and then it'll be open to debate. So this is sort of process of how it works if you haven't been to one of these meetings before. Regarding the updates and advice on planning applications and guidance for public speakers, attention is drawn to the advice note to applicants and the public, where it states that where updates have been received before the planning committee's meeting, a written summary of these is published generally by 5 p.m. on the day prior to the committee meeting. Please note the verbal updates may be still made at the meeting itself. So, having said all that, we will go on to item 7. Which is planning application 25/00/444, Breeden View Holiday Park Estate, a Great Cumberton Golf Club, which, as you know, came before the committee last month and was deferred for various technical problems. I would like to ask the speakers to take their seats, which is Mark Lolly, Great Cumberton Parish Council, and Dr. Jim Wade, and Paul Harwood, who I think is already seated there. Thank you. Thank you very much. Planning Officer is Matt Conville. Matt, could I ask you please to outline this? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to start by drawing members' attention to the written updates that relate to this application. They outline the latest response of the Highways Department, which has reviewed its previous comments and concluded that they are robust and they're happy with their decision that the proposal will not significantly impact highway safety. And the update also runs through a couple of additional letters that were received since the last committee. As mentioned, it was deferred at the previous planning committee to allow further clarification of what is being proposed, and that has resulted in the amended description that you have before you, which essentially includes everything that's being proposed within the red line boundary of the site. Right, sorry, bear with me a second. My presentation is not moving up. Got a bit of a delay. So this is a plan that just shows the relationship of the site to Pershore. It is 2.4 kilometres to the south of Pershore, a relatively close distance in terms of access to amenities and facilities. This is showing the site as it is at the moment, so you can see approximately 400 metres to the south. This is Great Comberton, an attractive settlement directly to the south of the proposal. You can see the blue line, which has some of the units that were previously approved on. Nothing that's proposed as part of this application, it falls within that. You can see some of the holes of the golf course which are to be developed as part of this proposal, and then you can see the second part, so the golf course is in two parts of the current golf course, which is in the south section of the site, and that does not form part of this application. The site currently has permission for 81 units, which you can see the start of there. I think there's 61 currently occupied on site, and it has obviously the 18-hole golf course, and the access arrangements into the site are already in place, as we saw at the site visit for the last committee. This is a full submission with all details to be considered, and it includes primarily the key features are the change of use of the land to allow the siting of 145 caravans, all the necessary internal infrastructure so to get access to the caravans from within the site. It's and the enhancement of the landscaping perimeter within the site and the creation of attenuation features, as you would normally expect of something of this size. The site lies within open countryside outside of the defined development limits, and as such falls within the remit of SWDP2, which aims to protect countryside and promote sustainable development. SWDP2 itself doesn't include within its parameters this type of use as acceptable within the countryside, but it does have a clause that considers that anything that's allowed by another policy in that respect will still be acceptable and not ruled out by SWDP2. SWDP 36 sets out the principles by which applications for chalets, lodges, caravans, camping, those kind of uses could be considered, and as set out in the report, this proposal doesn't conflict with any of the principles that are set out, and is therefore considered to accord with this principle, and the accordance with this principle means that it doesn't conflict with SWDP 2. Also relevant is SWDP 37, which requires any applications that impact community facilities such as the golf course to be justified and adequately offset by sufficient benefits. In this case, it does result in the loss of some of the fairways of the 18-hole golf course, but a detailed review of the provision of the facilities and within the local area found that the provision of a reduced course within the secondary part of the site, there is demand for that, and it would still provide an alternative offer, and it's not considered that this benefit of the impact on the facilities is sufficient to impact negatively on the outcome of the application. In terms of design, the scheme you see in front of you today has been subject of a lot of discussion between officers, a landscape officer and the applicant. It's resulted in amendments from the scheme originally permitted, and that includes placing the lodges in more considered locations where they would receive maximum benefit of the landscaping and the enhanced landscaping within the site, providing that enhanced landscaping in the right location so that it adds further screen the development, and the use of darker, more neutral colour palette for the lodges, which will have a fairly significant impact, I think, on its views from the national landscape. The amendments would manage and mitigate the visual impacts of the proposal to such a degree that it would not result in any unacceptable long-term landscape and visual harm, and it's considered to comply with the landscape policies SWDP 21 and SWDP 25 in that regard. No objections have been raised in respect of the impacts on the historic environment, highway safety, biodiversity and flood risk, subject to the conditions and obligations set out in the report. There is Severn Trent raised an issue in terms of capacity. They didn't object to the proposal, and we've, as before, imposed or suggested imposing a condition which is fairly detailed and will ensure that all of the relevant information that's needed in order for Severn Trent to sign off and be happy with the drainage methods that are proposed will be submitted and approved prior to any development commencing. So it will effectively achieve what Severn Trent is aiming to achieve in its comments. And on balance, and for the reasons set out in the report, it was considered that whilst there would be some landscape harm and a reduction in the size of the golf facility, the impact was determined to be limited and outweighed by the benefits of the scheme, and it was therefore concluded that the proposal constitutes sustainable development and accords with the development plan policies and the relevant aims and objectives, and it's therefore recommended that it's approved subject to conditions and obligations set in the report. Just as a final slide, I was asked to include this is taken from the landscape visual impact assessment. It looks from Breeden Hill, the national landscape, down towards the site, and this is at year 15, so this is the development completed and with the maximum landscaping that's proposed. So you can see the site is this piece of land here. Now, obviously, the development will be visible from that high vantage point, but the impact has to be considered in terms of the degree of impact and the impact that has on the vista as you're standing in that point or any point on Breeden Hill. And you can see that with the use of the darker materials, with the landscaping, there is, whilst it is visible, the impact is limited, and it's not considered by our officers to be sufficient to warrant the refusal of the application in this instance.
Thank you, Matt. Mark Lolly, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
The original application for the current 81 caravans on this site was rejected by this planning committee. The inspector allowed the appeal because they were well screened by existing woodland. Initially, this application was for 182 more caravans, reduced to 145 after the objections from the landscape officer and the Cotswold National Landscape. The CNL withdrew its initial obligation, but placed the onus on Wychavon, saying the proposal will still have a residual adverse impact upon the landscape and scenic beauty of the CNL and its setting due to its impact on views to and from the CNL. And the board considers that there remains a degree of conflict with paragraph 189 of the NPPF, SWDP policies 23 and 36, and the CNL management plan policies CE1 and CE13. Consequently, in determining this application, as an assessment must be made by the decision maker as to whether the benefits of the proposal outweigh these adverse impacts upon the CNL and its setting in the context of the great weight to be given to the conservation and enhancement of the CNL's landscape and scenic beauty. These benefits contained in 2 paragraphs of the planning application are merely these: spending in local pubs, etc., and at visitor attractions. These units are self-catering accommodation with a bar, shop and cafe on site. There will therefore be a loss to the local business offering accommodation. Creation of between 15 and 20 jobs. Given the site is presently staffed, this number is difficult to justify. Access to the countryside for more people. but an adverse impact on sensitive local wildlife sites. Economic benefits at the construction stage, including locally sourced caravans. As far as we are aware, they are made in Hull. Improvements to the golf course by reducing it from 18 holes to 9. This by omitting the best holes. There is very little space to lengthen the holes, and the trees that restrict it are those that screen the caravans. This seems absurd. There is no evidence produced to justify these claimed benefits. Yet this is swallowed whole by your planning officer, who devotes just one paragraph out of 52 pages to the benefits, which he has specifically been asked by the C&L board to weigh against the adverse impacts they detail. This proposal is far from meeting the various policies of the SWDP. The benefits would have to be very much greater than this to make it acceptable above the obvious and many adverse effects.
Thanks. Dr. Jim Wade, you have 3 minutes. Thank you. Can you put that on? Thank you. Start again.
Yeah.
Okay.
But my issues are mainly with the sewer in the village. The foul drainage discharge rate for all 226 caravans should be 1.57 litres per second and not the 1 litre per second as stated by the applicant. This considerably higher figure will almost double the maximum flow rate agreed with Severn Trent. So even if the pumps run at maximum 24 hours a day, they would only be able to remove 55% of the generated output. Furthermore, there will be a permanent flow of 0.87 litres in the combined gravity sewer within Great Comberton, further limiting the sewer's ability to handle extreme weather events causing overflow and contamination of our environment with human waste. I've read the conditions in section 5 of the committee's paper and have the following observations. A Severn Trent officer stated in an email to the planning officer as part of the Severn Trent submission that treatment works has confirmed they can currently only accommodate approximately 50 caravans, and as far as I'm aware this has not been mentioned in the report. They go on to say that although the capital scheme has not been finalised, it is anticipated that upgrade works are planned in the treatment works during the next AMP period of 2030 plus. So the crop form treatment works, yes, but what about the physical capacity of the sewer in the lower village and the Pershore pumping station? The asset management plan is a 5-year regulatory cycle, in this case presumably starting in 2030, so initiation of any works would be more than 3 years after any planning approval in 2026. The applicant suggests that the proposed torpedo tanks will control flow into the sewer. Will those units currently on site be reconnected to these tanks, and will the conditions in section 5 apply to the current 81 units that are causing problems and lie outside the red border of the application? How are the current Breeden View discharges measured and logged, and are data submitted to and checked by Severn Trent? If not, can this be an additional consideration or condition? The applicant has a discharge licence into the public system and intends to maintain the discharge rate with the proposed development. Importantly, I can report that compared to our usual daily miasma, for at least 3 weeks there have been no reports of smells included at our property, immediate neighbours and at least one colleague who's regularly at Key Lane, which lies further into the village. This is, of course, because Breeden View is closed in January. And this underscores that the current discharge rate when the site is occupied, whether permitted by licence or not, overwhelms the village's antiquated sewer. Any proposal to connect a further village's worth of WCs to the system seems preposterous. Even if any or all the conditions in section 5 are met on paper, can there really be any guarantee that our lives will not be blighted thereafter, and will we have any recourse? Thank you for listening. We are ordinary Wychavon residents who feel stuck between a water company and a business far enough away from the problem not to be adversely affected by it or to acknowledge their role in causing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wade. Thank you. Paul Harwood, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to reiterate there is a local need to diversify a currently unviable golf yacht course towards a new holiday use. This addresses a plan-led need for tourism. Currently, the site is not generating sufficient return against its operational costs to render the whole entity viable. The addition of these units will allow the site to generate economic revenue in a stable, profitable manner over time. Members will see that we've included the council have included a planning condition to phase the development over time. The local plan is very clear at Policy 36 that holiday caravans will, and I will emphasise will, be permitted subject to compliance to remaining bullet points in the policy. This proposed form of development is encouraged by the local plan, and the application is delivering on the overall stated aims of your local plan to grow tourism across South Worcestershire. The application complies with all parts of this policy as confirmed by your officers. The site is in flood zone 1, the development is not prominently or visually unwelcome. There's a generous landscaping package provided to screen the development, and it's well related to its setting, which is an existing holiday resort and golf course. The development will not exceed the infrastructure or landscape capacity of the area. Vehicle traffic can be safely accommodated, and the development will provide an appropriate level of on-site utility infrastructure to deal with foul water. At the last committee meeting, there was much focus on traffic impacts and the excessive traffic generation. So I just want to remind all that the MPF test for residual highway impacts is a test of severe. So if the impacts are not severe, then plan applications should not be refused, as directed by the government. The submitted transport assessments demonstrate the residual highway impacts would not be severe and the site can safely be accessed. Members asked questions around the methodology behind the transport assessments. I'd just like to provide some additional technical information. So the traffic surveys were undertaken under Department of Transport guidelines, and guidance requires that traffic surveys are undertaken outside of school holidays and in typical weather. This means before the 3rd week of July and the 2nd week of September. Surveys for this development were undertaken in January at a time when no local events, school holidays, or there were school holidays, and at times when traffic was typical. Taking typical traffic conditions allow us to model the worst case impact of the development. And using this data, the impact was modelled at 100% occupancy for all resulting 226 caravans plus the 9-hole golf course. The use of TRIX data was to model the worst case scenario in order to assess the impact on the highway network. In all scenarios, junctions locally, even when Eckington Bridge is closed, have sufficient capacity, and therefore the overall impact on highways is not severe. In regards to foul water, I just want to state again that the development can sufficiently store and manage flows on site and maintain its permit off-site. As I said before, the application complies with the local plan when read as a whole. Policy 2, 4, 7, 21, 22, 23, 25, 36 and 37 are all in compliance, and therefore the proposed development should be approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The ward member who, Councillor Beverly Hardman, some of you know, cannot be here today because she has a very important funeral that she had to go to. She sends her apologies. I have a statement to read out later from her. So I'll ask the other committee members if you have any questions for the speakers, and you can include Nigel Gorski and also Andrew Fell if you have any questions for the speakers or for those two. That's fine, or for the case officer. I have 2 hands raised. Councillor Kersey to start with, followed by Councillor Dawes, followed by Councillor Sims.
Chairman, thank you. Can I first of all ask a question, please, to Paul Harwood? I was interested to note that you again said to us about that there is a planned local need for this, which I'm to a degree interested in what that local need is, other than to increase the profitability of the current site. Can you expand on that, please?
Certainly, Councillor. So the reason justification text that stands behind policy 36. Sorry?
Sorry, I was just wondering the specific need that you said that there is a local need. I wasn't asking you to just reiterate the policy. If you could just tell me what the local need is, please.
Yeah, I mean, the local need is to support a business that's currently unprofitable.
Okay, thank you. So bear in mind that you've highlighted to us how important that is. Could you tell me why you haven't done anything whatsoever about providing any of the data that the Planning Committee asked for last month, please?
So I have to come back. Which data is that? Is that economic or highways?
Right, okay. You may remember that I highlighted that in the highways response, they used the word disappointed 3 times. This time they state they are again disappointed in the data that you've actually used in respect of highways. So I appreciate that that is the bare minimum, but I've never ever seen highways before say that they are disappointed, or in fact 3 times to say that they're disappointed. And I'm sure that you heard last month the committee's dissatisfaction with the data that you provided. So by using the tricks data, which is what highways were disappointed with, so why did you not use the different data? And why have you still stuck with using data from January, which we know cannot be considered as a neutral month because the site is closed in that time? So why have you not given the committee the information that we asked for last time?
I'll start with the latter point first. So January is acceptable month for highway traffic surveys. It follows Department of Transport methodology. I can't really say more than that. The survey efforts are in line with national standard. Tricks data is, again, a national standard that highway officers don't take issue with across the country and follows Department of Transport guidelines. So, yeah, I mean, we're comfortable with the data we've used.
Okay, thank you. You might be comfortable, but clearly the committee weren't, but that's fine. Okay, it's your choice to what data you provide us for. So, Chairman, if I could please ask some questions to Nigel. Nigel, could you tell me, it's clear in the policy and in your report about the piece about January being a neutral month and that unless otherwise requested by highways. So could you tell me, if highways don't otherwise raise any concerns, could you tell me why you've accepted that January is a neutral month and not raised the concern, bearing in mind the park is completely closed in January and therefore does not have any traffic coming or going from it?
I can answer that. So, I guess in the past there was a time when there was months that were acceptable. That has changed since the DFT have updated policy in 2020 TAG guidance, which is transport analysis guidance, and there isn't neutral months anymore. So I guess the way to assess surveys has changed in recent times, but there is certain criteria that you have to check, and obviously the Highway Authority, doesn't ideally want traffic surveys to be done in January, but they have gone through the process to check that it is traffic flows are typical of a normal day, and that is that the surveys were done outside of school holidays. They weren't done immediately after Christmas or New Year, as you might expect in January. It could be snowing, which obviously affects traffic on the road. But so you have to make sure that the surveys aren't adversely affected by severe weather conditions or any other local events that are happening. So we have obviously done those checks. I guess the response said they're disappointed because ideally it would be better, but there's applicants are trying to achieve a timescale, and they have done their surveys in January, but we have done the appropriate checks. It's a good distance beyond Christmas. I think the surveys were the Thursday, the 16th of January, I think. So the schools went back on the 6th. So there's a good time that normal conditions have been resumed. There was no adverse weather. It was just we obviously have checked, it was just like a cold, damp day, which is probably typical January weather. And there is no like unusual circumstances on the roads that would direct traffic away from it or anything like that. So we obviously have checked the data, and we are content that it is suitable. I do take your point that obviously this park isn't open during January, so the traffic counts don't take account. They take account of the background traffic on the road, effectively people going to school, going to work. They don't take account of the traffic that's already generated by the site. So that's when Trix has come in. So Trix is a database of surveys of similar sites, and it kept at a national level. So lots of developments all around the country use this database. So you have to use that and you replicate what's on your site. So by using other sites around the country. You can compare a site of a similar nature, holiday accommodation. You can set the parameters so it reflects, limited public transport provision, limited amenities within, a short walking distance. It accurately reflects the location of this site, and therefore you have a trip rate, which is a prediction on the trips it would generate. And so they've added that traffic on to their surveys. So they have taken account of the developments, but not from the traffic survey. They've generated it separately from TRICS.
Okay, thank you, Nigel. Quite a few points to bring up in there. When you've said other sites of a similar nature, so in the original report, Highways said that it was on the presumption that people would arrive by car, they would leave by car a week or 2 weeks later, but in the meantime, they would either walk to the facilities or they would use public transport. So can you tell me, has the data assumed other sites that are exactly the same as Great Comberton, i.e. no facilities within walking distance and limited or no public transport?
Admittedly, no site is identical. Every site is, marginally different, but they have used sites in a isolated location. Effectively, that's just a name that's in TRICS. It's not, necessarily related to this site. So, which does, accepts that there is limited alternatives to travel other than car. So that has been taken account on the other sites. It is applied to this one. So it isn't underestimating. The other sites don't assume that, that everyone's catching the bus and there's amazing walk routes and cycle routes to all local amenities. They are, as comparable as they can be. So it is a reasonable comparison. And so, we are content that it does. The TRICS results reflect this site.
Okay, thank you. And 2 questions more, if I can, please, Chairman. You state that it was the 16th of January. Obviously, we have differing views about whether that was a good month to use, bearing in mind the site was closed. You also state in the updated Highways report that the data was used from the 2017 application. So are you saying that the data was used from the 16th of January 2017, or is this data that's been obtained since then?
No, the traffic counts, which don't take account of the TRICS data, they were new in January 2025. The trip rates which were generated were used for the past planning application. So I have included TRICS data from 2017, but we have, as we would with any situation, we would run the site through TRICS ourselves, and we could compare the results. So we've done an updated TRICS analysis, and we've compared it against the TRICS results which were provided for the last application, and the results are very comparable. So, I guess, yes, probably another use of our disappointed word in the response that, ideally the applicant would have updated their TRICS results and put them into the report. But we have gone through the process. We have checked that data. We are still happy that it matches current sites that are in TRICS. And so, there is no need to ask the applicant to update it because we know we are already happy with them results. So.
Okay, thank you. And you said that on the 16th of January, that week, it was a cold, damp day, presumably a cold, damp week, but presumably Eckington Bridge was not closed that week for when you've taken the data, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, so can you talk me through, because obviously when Eckington Bridge is closed, it has a major effect and major impact on Great Comberton. Can you tell me how the data is taken into account that major effect that Eckington Bridge being closed has had? And can you also tell me, please, how many times in the last year or the last 2 years Eckington Bridge has been closed, which has then prompted that massive impact on the increase in traffic through Great Comberton, please?
Obviously, when Eckington Bridge is closed, it does cause a disruption to the area. Traffic has to reroute. There is no other option about it. I don't know the exact number of times that it gets closed each year, but I know it is several times a year during the winter when obviously the floodwater reaches or comes close to the height of the carriageway. So the capacity assessments, which are set out in the transport assessment, have, I guess, assumed a scenario when the bridge is opened, but they've also done a rerouting exercise of when, assuming the bridge is closed, and therefore we have also tested the traffic impact at junctions, assuming traffic has rerouted. So both options have been considered. I guess this development isn't really, this doesn't cause a problem for the bridge as much. It's you can get to Pershore without using the bridge. You can get to Eckington without using the bridge. Obviously, but rerouting traffic around the whole area obviously would be impacted. But so we've done as much as we can to test that situation, but it is obviously not something that we can really mitigate against. It is it's an occurrence, and it does happen, and we just have to accept that.
Well, I think, Nigel, really, I think the committee want to know from Highways that you have taken into account that mitigation, because I guess one final question for you, and that is, how can the committee have any confidence in the report that's come from Highways when you've used a neutral month that the park is closed, you've used a mixture of 2017 data, you've assumed in good faith that there's 81 plots constructed on site when there isn't, there's 50, and then you haven't fully taken into account the fact of the number of times and the impact on those roads when Eckington Bridge is closed. So how can the committee have faith and confidence in the report and the updated report that Highways have provided to us?
Yeah, I guess we have, even though we get data that might not be ideal, we do our own checks on that data. We can run our own data, we can compare it to newer data, and it doesn't really necessarily matter what is set out in the report. We obviously write the report up as an honest take on what has been provided, but we have checked the TRIX results against our own comparisons. We have checked the traffic data against newer surveys, and checking that the January month is comparable to the other months. We have I guess the applicants who have put it together, the consultants, have rerouted traffic in relation to the closure of the bridge, and so we have looked at the impact of that. So that is effectively the rerouting of traffic on capacity assessments. Every time the bridge is closed, that situation would occur. It doesn't necessarily matter how many times. That is effectively that is the situation as the worst case for the junction.
Thank you. I think, Nigel, if you don't mind, I'm going to butt in this time, which I think we probably heard enough of that. Thank you, though, very much for your comments. I would like to go on to other speakers, but thank you for coming this afternoon anyway. I hope you're going to stay and supply us all the information for the other applications as well. Nick Hawkes.
Thank you, Chair. A question for Matt, I think, please. It's been mentioned by the applicant, and I'm sure I read it, but there was certainly talk of a phased development to ensure that there's no pepper potting of the caravans, that they're going to be done in chunks so that the mitigating plant life can be put in place. I cannot see that in the conditions. I might be being blind, but I've read and read.
I think it is a condition, Councillor Dawes. Just let's check that one.
If you want to go on, and we'll come back to it.
Yes, we'll come back to you in a minute. Have you got another question?
No, that's my question. Thank you.
Yes, Carl.
It's condition 10.
Okay.
No, that goes on about delivery vehicles. I don't.
I'll come back to you in a minute. Can I bring in Councillor Sims?
Thank you, Chair. Can I just quickly clarify with Matt, please? MPPF 189 was quoted. Can you tell me what that is? Sorry. And is that the new MPPF or the old MPPF? Is it? Also, Matt, just quickly, you mentioned about the actual static vans, or perhaps the agent. Can we ensure that these will be discrete, moving on into the different phases?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so just to start with, if 189 was mentioned, I'm assuming it will be paragraph 189 of the current MPPF, which essentially says that great weight should be given to conserving and enhancing landscape and scenic beauty in the national parks, national landscapes, etc. So yeah, obviously, because they're so important and attractive, you have to give the impact on them significant weight in any decision.
So my second question was in terms of the actual units, either the agent or yourself, Matt, just to ensure that moving forward, if this were going to be accepted by the committee, that these units will always be a discrete looking unit.
Yes, I agree. I totally agree. I think that's really important to make sure that we put controls on any decision that monitors. Obviously, we'll monitor the locations of them. We've got a condition on that looks at materials and makes sure that they're dark and more natural. And if you look at the plan in terms of the landscaping, it's the benefits of using the golf course is that, as you can see, so instead of it being an open piece of land, and then if you imagine viewing it from Breeden Hill, you would look sort of this way and there might be some landscaping there, but as you go further back, often there wouldn't be as much landscaping. But using the golf course and the landscaping that wraps around each of the sort of offshoots of the fairways, you've got a kind of layered effect of landscaping. You've got a set of units, then you've got landscaping, another set of units and landscaping, so it will quite effectively screen that as you go back from the site and reduce how prominent that is from a higher vantage point.
Okay, going back to your can we just go back to Councillor Dawes and I'll come to you, Councillor Tucker. Kieran, could you just clarify this condition?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the condition 10, it is referencing construction traffic management plan. There is a point in there about the detailed delivery programme for holiday lodges, but I think your point goes a bit further. Some of it might be covered under the construction and ecology management plan, which is condition 11, but we'd essentially have to secure, if that doesn't secure the sort of phased development, how it comes forward, we could put on an additional condition just for clarity that actually requires that phasing plan to be submitted to us and agreed. And that would essentially have to set out in which way, when it comes forward and which bits, and that can dovetail with the planting and ecology as well, benefits as well.
Thank you, Kieran. So, yeah, I would, if we were going to approve this, I would like something to that end to be put in specifically to avoid a pepper pot, to ensure that each road is completed before the next one is started, or some wording to that effect.
Okay, can I bring in Carl?
Thank you.
Carl?
Yeah. As you see above condition 10, it says phasing plan. We've just picked up, my fault, but I'll blame it on gremlins in the system. We did construct, following last committee, a phasing plan condition that you're alluding to, and the text of that, for some reason, does not pull through into the report. So I'll read it out. This is an intended condition that would be imposed. Prior to the commencement of development, a phasing strategy setting out the phasing of development across the approved site shall be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. The strategy shall show that the development will first utilise the available locations closest to the central community building and extend outwards towards the edges of the site as development progresses. And the reason? To ensure the proposed development comes forward in a managed and planned way that limits the impact on the character and appearance of the surrounding landscape and adjacent national landscape and its biodiversity in accordance with policies SWDP 21 and SWDP 25 of the South Worcestershire Development Plan and the relevant aims and objectives of the National Planning Policy Framework. So apologies, we had constructed it following the last committee, but for some reason it's not pulled through in our system, but that is a condition that we would look to impose.
Okay, thank you. Can I just ask one question of the applicant? Will you be happy with that condition?
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tucker, followed by Councillor Morris.
My question to Mr Harwood relates to the biodiversity impact of the proposal. And I note the comments from the Parish Council regarding the reduction in bat species which have been observed over a number of years, saying that 11 species were observed for the original application for 81 caravan sites, and for the current application only 4 common species have been detected, and the suggestion is that there does need to be a resurvey to indicate what is the actual impact on that very important element of biodiversity. And I wonder, can you confirm that that survey has been carried out or will be carried out? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tucker. Yeah, so last summer we did nighttime bat walkover surveys, automatic detections through 5 nights in 2 survey periods. There were bats found on site, but most of them were common, so none of them have particular protection, although they are protected species. That's been assessed by our ecologist, and with the landscaping that's proposed, it's considered that there'll be an overall enhancement to habitat for commuting and foraging bats. To the rear of the ecology report, you will find the locations of the bats, and they're largely within the existing landscaped areas as opposed to the grassed areas where development's focused. So, yes, we've assessed bats, and our position is that we'll enhance their habitat as part of the scheme.
Okay. Councillor Tucker.
I just note really the reduction in species that have already taken place, and I query whether the steps that Mr Harwood is talking about will actually increase the incidence of the more important bat species which have obviously been lost since the original applications for the 81 caravan sites.
Do you want me to comment on that?
So that one, quickly.
I was just going to say the bat surveys for the original application was to the south of the site, whereas the bat surveys for this application is to the north of the site. So the difference doesn't signify a reduction, it's just different areas of the sites.
I think we could discuss this for a long time, couldn't we? I'll get to know about bats, that's for sure. Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Chair. A question to Dr Wade. You made specific reference to condition 5. I read condition 5 as being very reassuring, but I didn't detect that you did. I read it as meaning nothing can happen until sewage capacity has been increased. So I'd like your take on it, please.
Yeah, thank you for the question. This all seems a bit surreal to me that the caravans outside the red area, the lower ones, are emptying into the sewer when Severn Trent said it can only match the capacity of 50 caravans. And yet this has been allowed to happen. Severn Trent won't do anything about it. I see no reason why Allen's caravan should either. It's not their problem. They've got a licence. So I find it hard to believe that without substantial work on the sewer in the lower part of the village, plus or minus a pumping station, let alone wherever the stuff goes to in Cropthorne, that's going to accommodate this much extra material, presumably is going to cost an awful lot of money to Severn Trent. And my worry is that we will see these conditions ticked off as they passed, and then the site will be up and running, and we will be left with the status quo as it is now, which is, except when it's closed, we have a daily stench in the lower part of the village, and on days when you don't want to go out in your garden. So I'm sorry, I guess I'm just cynical. It just seems preposterous to me that anybody could even think of doing this without getting Severn Trent to explain what their capital outlay is going to be for this period of 2030 plus, as they describe it. So I'm presuming that's that 5-year period starting from 2030.
Okay, so as a committee member, I need to be reassured that Wychavon is 100% confident that condition 5 is robust and it will be enforced.
Thank you. Carl
Condition
or
5,
Ed,
yeah,
one of you.
Chair. Condition 5 requires consultation with Severn Trent Water. We're in this situation again, and we're familiar with from various other sites and areas we have within district. It's where planning stops and other legislative bodies take over. This is a matter for Severn Trent and Ofwat, insofar as that they have not objected to the application, they have not requested a grampian condition. The applicant has a licence to discharge. I appreciate the community is stuck between a rock and a hard place, but planning cannot solve the world's problems. We have to stay within the remit of planning. This is a matter for Ofwat and Severn Trent, and for Severn Trent, to be quite frank, to pull their finger out and spend the money and do whatever they need to do. We do not want to be in an appeal where we get hauled over the coals, venture into things outside of planning and go down for costs on something that Severn Trent to control. This is the worry. So I appreciate everyone's concerns. I share it.
Hang on a minute.
My question is, will condition 5 be
Sufficient.
Absolutely. We will
Yes,
consult
well,
Severn, we'll consult
Carl,
Severn
it's
Trent.
fine.
If Severn Trent say we cannot discharge it, we'll refuse the discharge of condition. If Severn Trent say it's okay to discharge, we'll issue the discharge of condition. They are a consultee on that condition. And with the greatest respect to including our own planning department, if Severn Trent say that condition's okay, who are we to argue with Severn Trent and their infrastructure? It's a matter for them and Ofwat once they have said it's okay in terms of the condition.
Right, so just so I'm 100% clear on this, they will come to you, they will give you...
Well, we will go to them. The applicant,
okay.
if it was approved, will submit details to discharge condition 5. We will, as a part of the record, it will be a public document. Anyone can input and comment on it. We will consult Severn Trent, and at the point we have an answer from Severn Trent, we either issue the decision in accord, or it might be that they need further information from the applicant. If Severn Trent say it should be refused, we'll refuse it. If Severn Trent say it can be discharged, we'll discharge it. But Severn Trent will be consulted, and ultimately, because the provisions within that condition, they are, although we are the decision maker, they are clearly the authority on this matter, given the condition relates to their infrastructure. As you know, this condition came from a planning inspector. It's been tested by a KC. We've gone with it because of all the advice we've got is that it's a robust condition and does, if you take it back to how this came about, this forms the granting condition that Severn Trent wanted at Drake's Broughton, and the inspector said did not meet the planning test with conditions. So we cannot do any more than we've done here. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Kersey.
Chairman, following on from Councillor Morris's point, and I think hopefully this might assist Councillor Morris, I feel more confident with any conditions that that we might impose now, because we've had, unfortunately, far too many situations where, when we're actually talking about housing, we've got villages that have got sewage running down the street and we're then expected to approve another 100 houses or whatever. So as far as the conditions that we actually impose now, I'm far more comfortable with them. But this is a question to the applicant, please, and hopefully this will... well, according to what you say, will answer some of Councillor Morris's questions as well. I'm actually concerned that here, obviously, we can only deal with the application that's in front of us. We can't go back retrospectively and apply conditions to the application that you've already got approval for, albeit it was by the inspector, it was refused by this council. But could you tell me, please, on the basis that with 50 caravans in use, we know that there's sewage going down into the village, when the site is closed, the village don't experience that. So can you tell me what your plan, aside from this application, can you tell me what your plan is for the other 31, please, in respect of the sewage and the drainage?
Thanks, Councillor. Well, the existing tanks that serve the 81 have enough capacity to deal with the uplift. But I think there's a lot of local concern here, and I think it's remiss of me to say that the applicant is not shutting down any communication. They're more than happy to speak to the community, understand the issues, and when they come to submit the next phase of the FAL, there is an opportunity as it connects to the existing plant to look at what the issues are locally and see if they can help. Again, we just say that we're not proposing to exceed our permit, so we can control everything our side, as I said last time at the committee, but beyond, when it gets to the manhole, the Severn Trent, that's when it becomes their management piece.
I hear you, but I guess, and I totally understand the frustrations with Severn Trent from all of our sides, but I just feel you're here today for 145 caravans, but we already know that the 81 that you've got permission for, you've only got 50 of them being used and in construction, and we already know that when you say that the capacity has got for the uplift, but clearly there's a problem with the 50. So I just think, I hear what you're saying about the licence and that it's not your responsibility, but I just think there's a moral obligation here. You know, if I was the district councillor and the parish council were coming to me, as they did in fact when I was the district councillor representing Great Comberton, with the issue, that is something slightly different, but we're actually here to look at you as an applicant asking for an additional 145 when we already know that if you put those extra 30 in, then it's going to worsen the problems for the village. So it's really a sort of a moral question there. You know, what are you going to do? And I suppose it comes back to the original question that you were asked last month. Why are you wanting another 145 when you haven't put the other 30? But equally, we know that the system can't take that capacity. So what do you plan to do?
I think the applicant is speaking with Severn Trent about the performance at the moment, and there's certainly ways of managing it on site that can improve things. I think the starting point, if it's our side, is that they're not exceeding the licence, so we're not creating any issue. It seems that the licence, when the flow goes beyond the licence, there's an issue at the manhole, which is Severn Trent. And I appreciate that's probably not the answer, that is that constructive. That's not to say, in terms of that moral obligation, the applicant isn't going to work with the local community and make sure there isn't any issues. There's a condition that requires us to submit detailed FAL that will connect the new into the current. That presents an opportunity to ensure the whole system works robustly.
Okay, I mean, obviously this has been going on for quite a few years, so I appreciate your offer to work with the community, but obviously it has been going on for a while. But what I've just taken from that, thank you, is that you actually agree that the inspector shouldn't have approved the last appeal, but I won't go into that.
I'll disagree with you on that.
No, sure.
I don't think we can go backwards. We can go forwards and hope. Councillor Dyke.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick one, really. Can we stop calling these caravans? They're not caravans. They're lodges.
What would you like to? What are they called?
Well, what it says on the application, it's lodges. They're not caravans.
We will call them
Static
lodges.
or otherwise.
Lodges. Thank you. Thank you for that. Any other comments at all? Any other questions at all? No? Thank you for that, and thank you for the speakers. And would you like to return to your seats? Thank you. As I said earlier, Councillor Beverly Hardman unfortunately can't be here, but she sent me the statement to read out. Questions were asked at the last planning meeting for the same number and location of homes. Concerns were, and still are, that sewage is an issue, as Severn Trent acknowledged. A document about this is on the planning portal. Latest correspondence from Severn Trent last week says they are investigating the area and will be looking at the pumping station and any potential impact from local planning applications. They hope to provide updates in the next few weeks. So, if the application is successful, the conditions need to be clearly defined. With sewage issues, I would like Severn Trent to review and analyse the proposed sewage system to check it will be able to cope with more homes public accommodation when added to the system. Only when Severn Trent know more homes can be added to the system can they cope with sewage can any more homes be built. Currently, sewage is an issue in the village. With regards to the County Council Highway report, as demonstrated at the last planning meeting, the survey was done in January when the site will have next to no one on site. Most will be using the site in the summer. I believe that a condition should be attached to this application that we need up-to-date highway data, then decide whether it does or doesn't affect the application. This application, if passed, would have more homes on site than the rest of the village. So there could well be more people on site than in the rest of the village. Great Compton has no pub, no shop, no street lights, so the village cannot offer activities or services. The effect of this application on the village needs to be considered. Now I shall open it up to debate from the committee. Would somebody like to set it off? Councillor Kersey.
Chairman, thank you. I think you could probably tell from the questions that I've asked, I'm far from satisfied with what's been put before us. And in fact, the applicants have had 2 opportunities to provide us with the correct information to satisfy us. And I certainly don't agree with Nigel, who's representing Highways today, when he used expressions such as it doesn't really matter, because I actually think it does matter. As to the capacity of the network, but more importantly, it's really important that we actually get the correct data. Now, I understand that the applicant is able to submit this application with the data that they've submitted, the bare minimum, but that doesn't mean to say that I'm not going to be dissatisfied with what they've come forward with. Now, as far as I can see, really, the key policy that we're looking at here is to know if this application complies with SWDP 36, as the applicant has directed us to. By the way, Councillor Dyke, it does actually, SWDP 36 doesn't mention lodges, it's only caravans and chalets, but there we go. So the applicant believed that SWDP 36 is completely complied with. But I disagree, because as far as I can see, we've got 3 issues with this application. One is the highways, although highways tell us there isn't an issue because the data that they are happy with. The other issue is around the drainage and the sewerage and that whole piece of infrastructure. And the other issue is with regards to the visual harm and the landscape harm. Now, if we were looking at this for 120 or whatever houses, then we may be able to look at it on the basis that, well, actually, the highways don't object, and actually there isn't enough harm, visual harm, to the landscape, and actually the conditions control the sewage and the lack of infrastructure. However, we're not looking at houses, we're looking at lodges, Councillor Dyke. And so we're looking at SWDP 36. SWDP 36 specifically states that the site has to be visually unobtrusive and well screened from local vantage points, environmentally sensitive locations and public highways. This development is at the foothills of Breeden Hill, an area of outstanding natural beauty, and the National Landscape Board have raised issues to say that there will be visual harm. So we can't ignore, and most certainly I will not ignore, the National Landscape Board, and I for one do not want to be standing at the top of Breeden Hill and looking down from year 0 to year 15 and looking at the blot on the landscape from an area of outstanding natural beauty. We've seen a picture that says that at year 15 it might look okay, but what happens from year 0 to year 15? But the specific policy states that it must be visually unobtrusive, and it specifically states environmentally sensitive locations. It also states in SWDP 36 that the development is of design, form and scale that is well related to its setting and does not exceed the capacity of the area to accommodate the proposal. We know that this site, if this was approved, would be greater capacity than the village of Great Comberton. Now, the village of Great Comberton is in an area of outstanding natural beauty, and there are applications that are refused and dismissed at appeal for things like extensions which seem unobtrusive. So why on earth, when we take all the care to protect Great Comberton, are we then looking to put something that is going to double the size of the whole village in a form that is obtrusive to the landscape? But also, the other issue is SWDP 36, no matter what conditions we have, does actually state that the proposal must make adequate provision for foul drainage, water supply and utilities, and for sewage pump out and waste disposal. So on that basis, the three issues that we have, and particularly the two issues that we have around the scale, around the landscape and the drainage and the infrastructure, I believe that it means that it does not comply with SWDP 36. And on that basis, Chairman, I propose refusal that it does not comply with SWDP 36.
Thank you, Councillor Kersey. I'm sorry, I know some of you are, but please don't applaud until afterwards. Can I have some more comments, please? Councillor Dawes.
Thank you, Chair. I have a lot of sympathy with the objectors on this, but Severn Trent's a statutory consultee. We have to take their word. Highways are statutory consultee. We have to take their word. And the landscapes officer has not actually raised an objection either. I would be tempted to approve this, but I'll listen to some other arguments.
Councillor Sims.
Thank you, Chair. I just think we've discussed this before. Prior to this has come back. We've gone through every single nth of this, quite rightly, actually, to discuss landscaping, sewage and traffic. And this is a business that is aspiring, and I am going to support, I feel I should support a business. I think we've tried every which way, and I think supporting a business in these days is very important.
So are you proposing then that approval of this application? Haven't it as well? Okay. Can I have further comments then? Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Chairman. On the back of Councillor Kersey's point, with the greatest respect to Nigel, I think there were some clear gaps within the Highways report that hadn't quite been adequately addressed to the standard that they should be for such a major development. I think, in particular the Eckington Bridge, I know Adrian Hardman, if he had been here, would have, I'm sure, made a point around his long and drawn-out campaign to try and get something done with Eckington Bridge to make it more sustainable. But at the moment, that is still ongoing, and while that is ongoing, I don't believe that a development of this scale could be supported without some sort of backing documentation to show that it had been taken into consideration properly. So I'm not in the market of arguing with Councillor Kersey, so I'm happy to second her proposal for refusal of the application.
Thank you, Councillor Birch. Let's just carry on for a minute. Hang on a second. Can I have further comments, please? Councillor, anybody? Not for the moment. Councillor Robinson, are you speaking? So did I get that? No. Councillor Dawes. Councillor Dawes.
Thank you, Chair. In that case, I'll ask for approval of this along the officer's recommendations, provided we get the phased implementation paragraph put into the conditions.
Thank you, Councillor Dawes. Councillor Sims. Carl, do you want to butt in there? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, as we go to potential voters, we have two recommendations on the table, and the vote to refuse was first. Just to run through position, and obviously members are free to take whatever position they want. They can disregard this advice. As set out, Severn Trent have no objection to go down the road of looking to refuse an application in terms of the sewerage issue. I'm not going to over-repeat myself, but we're exposing ourselves to costs here. We've come very, very close on this at Drake's Broughton, albeit with housing, but there's been a very, very clear steer of where planning stops and other regulatory bodies take over. So the committee needs to be mindful of that. In terms of the landscape harm, we have effectively 3 expert landscape agencies saying that the development is acceptable. If we turn to the Cotswold National Landscape Board, they state in writing that they wish to withdraw their objection. AONB boards tend to be, quite rightly, highly protective of their landscape area, so to have them having no objection is significant. I think we would struggle to reasonably defend an appeal on landscape harm, bearing in mind our in-house landscape officer has no objection. Clearly the applicant's landscape expert is advocating the application, and the landscape board does as well. I think we are on a very high risk of costs on that ground potentially. I remind members we had a committee decision, I believe at Fernhill Heath about 18 months ago. We had 4 refusal reasons. One of those was landscape harm. That one reason for refusal was found to be unreasonable by an inspector, and that triggered a cost award of £50,000. So we just need to be mindful, are we absolutely confident in that position, bearing in mind 3 different experts have a qualified landscape view. Then turning to highways, you'll recall member training, we had Mike Rapport, Mike Glaze from Rapport came in. The benchmark, as you've heard, is a test of severe. I hear your concerns over the data, but the Highways Authority have no objection, and whatever misgivings they might have about the data have concluded that this development is acceptable. To stand before an inspector at potentially a public inquiry or a hearing when the Highways Authority are satisfied there is no objection leaves us inevitably open to costs. That's unavoidable, because the best will in the world, you have the experts say no objection. I'm not a highways expert. I rely on the Highways Authority. You know, you can join the dots. So you feel free to proceed however you want, but I have to give these warnings. That's my responsibility to you as a committee and to the council in terms of reputation and risk. So thank you, Chair.
Yes, I appreciate the fact that we need a view, all-round view of this, of applications and the effect that decisions are making. But I must point out that the decision is yours. The decision is the planning committee's. And if you feel that it should be refused or approved, it's up to you. I must say that it's very useful, and I appreciate Carl's praises, points which are very valid and have an all-round look at all the applications we've had in the district. But it's up to you to vote on this. And if there aren't any more points on this, I shall put it to the vote. We have had a first. Are there any more points? Councillor Kersey.
Chairman, thank you. I wasn't expecting to need to speak again, but I don't know whether our officer Carl actually heard me state that if this was for housing development, then I don't believe that we would use these grounds for objection. However, what I clearly stated is that this is SWDP 36, and SWDP 36 2, 3 and 4, it clearly states that this application does not meet SWDP 36 2, 3 and 4, and that's before we even get to anything to do with highways. And unless I'm completely incorrect, but I'm not aware of any appeal decision made at Fernhill Heath around caravans. I thought that was for housing. So it's a completely different kettle of fish. It's a completely different policy that we're using. So thank you for the comments, but thank you, Chairman, as well, for reiterating that it is the Planning Committee's decision, and I wholeheartedly believe that this should be refused because it does not comply with SWDP 36. And I will personally go to any appeal.
I don't want to get into a sort of discussion about appeals, especially in different districts. You're right that Fernal Heath was slightly different, but we thought we had a good grounds for appeal on that, and unfortunately we were upheld. But the appeal was upheld by the inspectorate, which was unfortunate. And I know that Wychavon went a long way to try and get that one, but unfortunately we didn't get that appeal. So I don't want to go on that basis. We know where we are. We've had a proposition and seconded for refusal, which was the first one, proposed by Councillor Kersey and seconded by Councillor Birch. So, Rachel, if we no more comments, I'll pass you over to Rachel. Are you happy with that? Or do you want to say something?
Oh, we just need. I think in terms of the reasons for refusal put forward, we just need to nail down the policy context, because obviously they need policy hooks for each area. So there's 3 areas that have been highlighted. So, but I think you've only mentioned policy SWDP 36, but you've also mentioned highways and the drainage issue as well, which have other policies associated with them. So it's just in terms of the resolution. I think it'd be helpful just to clarify, but also we just need to refer to policies as well. So in terms of the first point, I think there's elements that there's conflict, but you've also this is just a question really, but you've obviously picked up on the impact on the national landscape and you've relied on those comments. But there is a policy in relation to national landscape, which is policy SWDP 23, which if that was the primacy of part of the conflict with SW 36, it would probably be relevant as well. So just again to make that point, in terms of drainage, I just need to have a look at which policy it is, but there's a policy in relation to drainage which you'd refer to, and essentially you'd be saying that the applicants failed to demonstrate that appropriate capacity or means of managing it could be secured, and therefore it's contrary to the drainage policy. Just to check that that's the point along the drainage point.
Yeah, I think the overall issues around highways and drainage are encompassed in SWDP 36, but I would very much take your point to include SWDP 23, that it does not comply with that in respect of landscape, but also I would delegate the wording to the Director of Planning and Infrastructure for refusal, please.
Okay.
So if I can just summarise, make sure I've got this correct. So to refuse the application for the following reasons: SWDP 36, SWDP 23, highways and drainage. Just SWDP
36, 23, and to delegate the final wording
and to delegate the final wording of the refusal reasons to the Director of Planning and Infrastructure. And I'd also like to add in the technical reason of not having a completed Section 106 agreement. Are you happy with that? So all those in favour of refusing this application, please raise your cards.
This is all in favour of refusal.
Refusal. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in favour. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 against. The motion has fallen, Chair.
So we have for approval. We have a proposal from. I can't read my writing. Who? Sorry, Councillor Dawes, and seconded by Councillor Sims.
Thank you, Chair. So the recommendation is to delegate authority to the Director of Planning and Infrastructure to grant planning permissions subject to the completion of a 106 legal agreement to secure the obligations and the planning conditions, including the phasing plan condition described to committee today, allowing for any subsequent amendments to the obligations and planning conditions as required by the Director of Planning and Infrastructure. All those in favour, please raise your cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in favour. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 against. The motion is carried, Chair.
Thank you, and thank you for speaking and coming. If you, I think we'll have a 5-minute break, please. If you want to stay, you are welcome. Otherwise, thank you for coming. No, it's all right. Hannah's outside. Okay. Going straight on then, if you could. Thank you. If you could sit, concentrate. And item 8, application reference 25, oblique 02128, which is a PIP, land at Arrow Lane, North Littleton. And we have, I think, already seated Jim Hayward, who's the chairman of North and Middle Littleton Parish Council, and Neil Pearce. Welcome to you both. And the case officer is Robert Smith, so I'll ask you, Robert, if you could outline the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This application it lies within the North Littleton Conservation Area and is in the wider setting of the Grade 1 listed Tithe Barn. Here we have an aerial photograph of the site where you can see the grassland a bit more clearly in contrast to the surrounding shrubland. There are also a number of public footpaths beyond the borders of the site. And here we have some site photographs. One on the left is from Arrow Lane, looking at the application site, and then the second one on the right is within the site, looking onto the shrubland. And here we have two more from within the application site, looking onto the borders of the site. And here we have a final photograph looking towards the Tithe Barn, which is approximately 250 metres to the south of the site. There's also Grade 2 star listed St Nicholas Church, which is approximately 300 metres from the site. And approval is recommended for this application as per the committee report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jim Hayward, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Sorry, just before I start, could I say that I am known to Councillors Tucker, Adams, Robinson and Robson.
Thank you. I think they've already disclosed an interest. Have you? Councillor Tucker. Thank you for mentioning that. All right, thank you. And have you declared an interest, Councillor? No. Right, so has anybody else declares an interest besides Councillor Tucker or Councillor Robinson that we haven't already got? Okay, thank you. Thank you for mentioning that. Do carry on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. The Parish Council opposes the development. The application site is outside of the development boundary of the village and well inside the parish conservation area. As noted by the National Trust in their letter strongly opposing the application, in 2024, the Planning Inspectorate concluded that an alteration to the wider setting of the listed building would weaken the ability to appreciate its significance as a designated heritage asset. Even more helpful is the inspector's decision in 2015 in stating why some housing outside of the conservation area could be allowed. The inspector directly refers to the area of land we are considering and why it was included in the conservation area. I quote, "I recognise that the remaining farmland to the north and northwest of the Tithe Barn is integral to an understanding and appreciation of its significance, providing an historical context. Indeed, the conservation area was extended to include the open land and farmland between North and Middle Littleton in recognition of its importance as the immediate curtilage and surrounding historic agricultural setting of the Tithe Barn. I believe that this is really significant, being clear and conclusive guidance to us from an inspector of why the conservation area is drawn as it is and why a nationally important scheduled ancient monument will be diminished by any impairment of the area. North and Middle Littleton is one parish, but two entirely separate, markedly different villages. North Littleton has no church, no shop, no post office, no school, no significant employer, no parish hall, no playground. Sadly, it is classed as a Category 3 village rather than being in Category 4 due to being in a parish with Middle Littleton. Clearly, this doesn't make sense if you're trying to allocate housing in settlement where facilities are located. I think the uproar that would arise if other villages had to add in a neighbour's facility when housing development is considered is easy to imagine. Why should North Littleton suffer from this anomaly when other two village parishes are split? For example, Wadborough and Drakes Broughton are treated separately, and Breedon and Breedon Orton is split into 5. The site should not be classed as sustainable. Finally, there is little reference to what is required by the MPPF or SWDP in the summary of the report provided to members. Taking the environmental objective as an example, the opening words of the relevant paragraph in the MPPF are to protect and enhance our natural built and historic environment. There is no mention in the committee report summary of the loss of important green space or of the historic built environment. Please note paragraph 11 of the NPPF, referred to in the summary, contains section D1, footnote 7, which directly refers to green space and heritage assets, enabling refusal of an application in just the situation we are looking at today. Can I say this book, Shepherd's Country, written in 1939, states that the Tithe Barn in some regards is the finest in all England.
Many thanks. Thank you very much. Neil Pearce, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to address the committee today. I'd like to thank Robert for his detailed report, which sets out the relevant matters which can be considered within the PIP application. The proposal specifies between 2 and 3 bungalows which will be built on a garden plot which is in a sustainable location connected to the development boundary of a Category 3 village. As you'll be aware, the tilted balance means the principle of houses on the site is supported by your officers, despite it being mainly outside the development boundary. The site does lie within the conservation area, so the final design and layout will be required to have special regard to the sensitivities of the site. The site is arguably within the historic setting of the listed Tithe Barn and Church, which are approximately 250 metres to the south of the site. However, as you have seen from your site visit this morning, the site is more closely associated with the host dwelling, being garden land and adjoining built form along Arrow Lane, rather than any visual association with the listed buildings. As a result, your officers have concluded that less than substantial harm at the lower end of the scale would occur. Such harm must of course be weighed against the public benefits, those being the provision of housing and an affordable housing contribution. It is agreed that these benefits outweigh the less than substantial harm. No other planning constraints or footnote 7 designations are affected by the proposals, and there are no strong reasons for refusing the application. The proposal has been through a rigorous consultation process, and none of the statutory consultees have raised concern or objection to the proposal. However, I fully understand and appreciate the local concerns raised. Development has and will continue to take place within conservation areas, albeit quite rightly with a very high bar set for a sensitive and high quality design, layout and landscape-led scheme. The site does not form part of a significant gap designation, which is the policy tool for preventing coalescence. The proposal would not reduce the gap between North and Middle Littleton. Layout is a matter for the technical details consent stage, and we are aware of the need to reflect the linear nature of the settlement pattern in Arrow Lane. This will ensure a large physical gap is retained between North and Middle Littleton. Whilst flooding and drainage are also matters for the technical details consent, the site is not susceptible to pluvial or fluvial flooding. We agree with your officers that the site is in a sustainable location with pavement access to bus stops and village amenities. Other services and amenities are now within an easy reach of public transport following the introduction of the Worcestershire On Demand bus service to Wychavon in August last year. As set out in your officer's report, there are no objections to the principle of the development on the site. I therefore trust you will be able to consider favourably this application and grant permission in principle. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The board members are Councillor Judith Gotti, I don't think is here, but Councillor Hannah Robson, who's sitting outside the committee. Hannah, have you any questions for the speakers, please, or for anybody else here in the... Okay.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Question to the agent. You just mentioned their bus stops. Can you tell me where the second one is? Because there's only one functioning one that I'm aware of in the village.
My understanding is that there's one at the end of Arrow Lane to the west, and there's one outside the public house.
That one no longer is serviced at all outside the public house and is actually a second-hand book swap shop. So there's only actually the one bus stop. I just wanted that noted, that which is up the hill on the Arrow Lane crossroads.
Have you any more questions for?
Yes, and there's just one other question. So this is for part of the field. Is the rest of the field in the same ownership, and the field to the north of the application site in the same ownership? Because it's not clear.
My understanding is the field to the north isn't. There is other land within the land ownership. Well, not the applicant, but the applicant's landowner has further land available, yes. But obviously this is a much smaller application on the line delineated on the location plan.
Thank you. Thank you. That's it, Chair.
Thank you. I'll open it to the rest of the committee for any questions, please. Councillor Rowley, followed by Councillor Kersey.
I apologise. This is a question I should have asked on the site visit. Where is the tithe barn? Could we have that pointed out on the plan, please? Because I didn't notice it when we were on site. So
Sorry, it's not shown on the plan, but it's 250 metres to the south of the site. So the auction house you can see at the bottom of the site, it's approximately 100 metres beyond that.
If you were standing looking at the church, it was just in front of the. If it was in front of the church to the right, that's where it was.
This is a photograph I took on site
so we
this
could
morning.
just see the. Can we see the roof of it?
You can just
about
see the roof of it from this photo.
Councillor Kersey.
Chairman, thank you. A question to the applicant, please. You mentioned about respecting the linear design. Now, obviously, it's only permission in principle that's before us today, but bearing in mind that one of those considerations is number, how do you plan on respecting the linear design within that red line and actually achieve 3 bungalows?
So the proposal is for a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 3. We've had feedback from the planning officer that one house on the front and 2 behind wouldn't respect the local settlement pattern, and we accept that. An application at technical details consent could come forward for 2 bungalows in a linear form along the frontage, so there wouldn't be development behind the linear form.
Okay, so you're saying that within that red line boundary, respecting the linear form, that you're going to be able to, you think that you can fit 3 bungalows in on that road frontage? Is that what you're saying?
No, what I said was the application is for a minimum of 2, maximum of 3. 2 bungalows could fit on the front. I don't think 3 would fit on there, but the application allows the scope for a technical details consent to come forward for just 2 bungalows.
Okay. Thank you. Does anybody else got any points to ask? Councillor Tucker?
Thank you. It's perhaps a bit of a nitpicking one, but I'd like to ask Robert how he believes that he has considered the sustainability aspect of the environmental objective when what is stated is the proposal would enable more sustainable patterns of activity through being located adjacent to a Category 3 settlement that has some services and facilities. Surely this is not really considering the environmental objective, which should be related to our natural environment and the spatial aspects of the development.
Robert?
Yes, of course. So the environmental objective there would be the fact that there's facilities within the Category 3 settlement which are within walking distance, such as the pub. Yes, but it would limit vehicular movements, and the consideration for permission in principle is limited to the ecology, and that would come later on at the technical details consent.
Thank you. I know you'll have to leave it till the technical, that's if we get that far. Any other questions, please? It seems to be very quiet. It must be the heat in this building. Yes, thank you, Councillor Dye.
Thank you very much. There's not much noise going on with this, is there? But what there has been interesting. I saw the word bungalows when I first looked at this, and thought, well, that's probably quite a good thing in this day and age. So I'm going to propose.
Hang on a minute, we haven't got to that stage yet.
Oh, sorry.
We're still asking technical questions or clarifying to clarify. Anybody else want to ask a question, Councillor Morris?
Given the comment about preserving the linear form, can I just have a clarification? We can't restrict it to only 2, can we, on...
No, so the permission is for up to 3. If, say, they came in at technical details stage and we weren't happy that they 3 could be accommodated, we would look to reduce that to 2. And as we've discussed here, that 2 would be more appropriate in this instance. So we couldn't restrict it at this stage. You can't add a condition onto a permission in principle application, and it would come at the technical details consent stage.
We could add an informative, though, like we did, I think, on one previously. If you wanted to provide some direction as an informative, that would be absolutely acceptable within your gift.
And what about the bungalow bit?
Well, that's in the description of development.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Suitable question, Councillor Dawes, you've got a question?
Thanks, Chair. It's not so much a question, but I'm just saying if you look at the frontage opposite that frontage, there are actually 3 buildings, so they probably could fit. It might be tight, but...
Thank you. Any questions? No questions. Thank you. Thank you for speaking. Thank you both. Would you like to return to your seats? Thank you. Did you go? Yeah. All right. Okay. Would you like to address the committee once your hair will set down? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Yeah. Firstly, there were over 40 objections to this planning application made by villagers, and there are 22 listed buildings within North Littleton village itself. This is within a very short distance. The Conservation Review in 2013 stated that the tithe barn, a Grade 1 listed building of national importance, being the 3rd largest tithe in England, had already had its setting impaired, and thus the remaining setting should now be given the protection afforded by conservation area status, something that was backed up by the inspector's decision in 2024 on a piece of land comparatively situated within the setting of the tithe barn. This application was refused under delegated powers by the same officer today, who is recommending approval, and subsequently the appeal was dismissed, and it was for a PIP. The inspector says that the proposal would adversely affect the significance of the Grade 1 listed barn, a designated heritage asset. As such, the balance in paragraph 11D2 of the framework is not engaged, and the presumption in favour of sustainable development would not apply in this instance. I will reiterate that that proposal was only 1 field away from the tithe barn, which is exactly the same as this proposal's distance. The National Trust response, and this is not mentioned in the officer's report, strongly objects to the proposal. The National Trust state that not only is it Grade 1 listed, it is a scheduled monument. Again, like the inspector, the National Trust was looking at the application in sight in relation to the tithe barn and its wider setting with historical fields crisscrossed by ancient rights of way that converge at the tithe barn as you would expect. The site would be clearly visible from the tithe barn and the proposed development would form part of its context and wider setting. It is vital to protect this as stated in SWTP 6 and 24, where it sets out to conserve and enhance heritage assets and to historic buildings are valuable and finite, so must be protected and not harmed. The NPPF also recognises that heritage assets are an irreplaceable resource. It requires great weight to be given to the conservation of designated heritage assets. The National Trust goes on to state there is no existing landscaping that is sufficient to intervene between the proposed development and the tithe barn. The development would intrude on the views of the barn and would further erode the surrounding rural setting, which, due to its previous use of the tithe barn, forms a key part of its significance. The National Trust considers the site location as unsuitable for this development and objects to the proposal. And as heard earlier, we should not, and I can't ignore, a national body such as the National Trust. There have also been previous applications refused on this site for 30 dwellings that went to appeal. The appeal was withdrawn, so the refusal remained. This was in 2012. Following that, a year later, 25 dwellings were withdrawn. So there's a history of failed attempts to build on this ancient green land. The area of the village has no backland development, as we've heard already, and this impinges on the setting of the tithe barn or would be out of context and character for the Arrett Lane area. Although I don't think this site would accommodate 3 linear properties. The other key service in this parish, which is for employment, which has been mentioned, is a food factory in Middle Litterton. This is contrary to SWDP that for a key service to be relevant, it must be within 1 kilometre of the settlement. This application site is over this distance, and therefore the site should not be classified as sustainable. The bus service, and there is only one bus stop in the village, and the bus runs from Bidford to Evesham along the main Cleve Road. The bus stop is at the crossroads that you crossed on the way there this morning, and it's 500 metres away up a hill with no bus shelter. So there are a lot of objections. There's a lot of opposition to this, so I'd urge you to consider carefully your position today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll open it up to the committee. Councillor Rowley.
Well, it does say in the officer's recommendations that the linear development of the village is a characteristic, and I think there is possibility, if we're talking about 2 to 3 bungalows, I am sure there is a possibility of maintaining that. Of course, that isn't before us. That's the problem with these PIPs. You don't actually see exactly what is being proposed, but at this stage, I don't see no objection to 2 to 3 properties fronting the lane there. And also, it was impossible to see the tithe barn in detail from the location. So I don't see that it particularly would detract if they are on that particular site. So I'll move the officer's recommendation for approval.
Thank you, Councillor Rowley. Councillor Kersey.
Chairman, thank you. Listening to everybody speak, and particularly listening to Councillor Robson, first of all, I'm surprised that the National Trust's objections, which are very comprehensive, haven't been properly included within the officer's report. But also, I'm really surprised that this is officer recommendation for approval, particularly because in very recent times we've refused applications and indeed for a PIP in that area, and the inspector, as we know, the inspector isn't too keen on going along with refusals in the current time, but the inspector has refused everything that has been put forward at appeal. So I'm really at a loss to know why our officers really, bearing in mind the sensitive area that this is within, and yes, it is a permission in principle that we're looking at, but the key thing is that we're looking at location and land use within the permission in principle, and I can't see, bearing in mind all of the sensitivity of this site and its setting, I just can't see that it complies with SWDP 6 or 24. So on that basis, Chairman, I will propose refusal, that it does not comply with SWDP 6 or 24.
Can I have some more comments? Councillor Dyke.
I'd like to second the proposal for approval, please, made by Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Councillor Dyke. Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Chairman. As Councillor Closey says, it is a permission in principle, but I think purely in principle we should be objecting to this application on a lot of the basis of what Councillor Robson said around the number of listed buildings and sort of the general feel of the area. To allow new build developments of this scale, 3 might not sound like a large number, but in this situation it is. I think in principle we should be staunchly opposing it on the basis that we do need to protect that historic environment that the village is very, very fortunate to have. So on that basis, I'm happy to second the refusal proposed by Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Councillor Birch. Councillor Dawes.
Thank you, Chair. Having gone on site, I find it difficult that the tithe barn's involved in this at all, because we could barely see it. We could only see the ridge of it, and that is in a time of the year where there's no vegetation and nothing to shield it whatsoever. And I'm sure from the tithe barn you wouldn't be able to see any part of that area at all, although unfortunately we didn't get to see it. So I'm going to be inclined to support approval of this.
Thank you. Worth pointing out that Councillor Rowley didn't actually see it at all. Councillor Talks.
I would also like to add that, if possible, can we just put a note on here to say that should it come back on technical details, we only want to see a linear application, nothing else. Thank you.
Yes, we can't condition on PIPs, which I thought, but we can inform it. Can I have any further comments on it? Thank you. Councillor Adams.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. And I know Jim Hayward perhaps won't agree with what I'm going to say. As bigger friends, I think we might be. I think all members here this afternoon have had PIPs in their wards, and I expect all members here have got scars over them and what happened on them. For me, I don't like PIPs. I've never liked PIPs, and because I think the next stage, the technical detail stages, would enhance what the villagers think of their area for development. So I shall be supporting to go on to the technical detail stage. That'll strengthen our arguments about planning applications like this.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Any more comments at all before we go to a vote? No? Thank you. We have a proposal for approval from Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Dyke. Over to you.
All those in favour of approval, please raise your cards. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Approval.
Approval. Sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 8 in favour, Chair. All those against? 5 against. Motion is carried, Chair.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the speakers and for those who came for that application. If you'd like to stay for the last one, you're welcome. If you want to go, by all means, but go now. Would you like another break, or you want to crack on? It's a quick 5-minute break. It's 4 o'clock. 5 minutes only. Yes, thank you. I just want to welcome you from Flyford, Flavel. I've got to pronounce it right this time. I appreciate that you have a good community, and I've received many emails personally about this particular, but I do reiterate what I said right at the start of this meeting, that planning takes a long time to get to the planning committee through all sorts of agencies and discussions and everything else, and this committee has to make a decision whether you like it or not, and whichever way it goes. So I hope you'll respect the decision of the committee, especially on this one, because there's been a lot of people from the village to come like this afternoon. So we appreciate you coming, but we will discuss it and we'll get to a conclusion on it. And this is, of course, planning application 25/01891, land at Radford Road, Flyford Favour, where we went this morning for a site visit, erection of 14 new dwellings. And we have speakers, Mark Broughton-Taylor, Flyford Flavor, Grafton Flavor and North Biddle Parish Council, Mr Andrew Short and Mr Neil Pearce. If you come to the front, please, thank you. And welcome the planning officer, Julie Morgan. Over to you, Julie.
Thank you, Chair. So, since completing my planning committee report and updates to committee, since they were published, I do want to add some verbal updates to planning committee today. So, on the 3rd of February, there were 3 written objections received from Matthew Bennett, Teresa Jones, and Tim and Sarah Doty. On the 4th of February, 4 submissions of 3 written objections were received from Sean Cooper, a resubmission, Monica Cooper, resubmission, and Ruth Edge, resubmission, submitting the same objections to Chair of Planning Committee and the DM Manager separately. In summary, these objections were in relation to, in addition to issues previously raised in the previous updates and in the original Planning Committee report, which were captured. Large and significant development determination feels rushed without village input. An oversubscribed school. Is there an evidence need for dwellings in this location? Is this development really in the public interest? The new Wychavon Wychavon town represents a more sustainable option. This sets a precedent for further development in the village. The excessive speeding, which we've been told by the police, cannot be monitored as there is nowhere safe to stand within the village with a speed gun. Downgraded to a Cat 3 settlement. I assume that's in the new plan. The footpath is on privately owned land and increase of more than 10% development in the village. In addition to those updates, Chair, I'd also like to draw the committee's attention to an admin error on my part. At 7.8 of the committee report that I circulated, which is on page 115, there is a table of the proposed housing mix. This has been updated. I put the wrong table in the report, but the astute ones amongst you will note that in the presentation that has been circulated to members, there is another table, and that is the correct one. So you have the correct table circulated to you previously, but just to say that where the tables differ, it's the one in the presentation, and as we go through the presentation, I will leave that up so that you can refer to that. That is the correct housing mix. So just for the avoidance of doubt, and this is what we're making the determination on today. Okay, is that right? So if I go on to my presentation. So you can see the location of Flyford Flavel within the district, as shown, indicated by the red star. Now, in terms of the characteristics of the settlement, you can see that it's quite linear, but it is different in terms of it isn't a single road from north to south. It is centred around a dogleg junction. So even though it's linear in nature, there is a heart as well. And you can see indicated on this plan, the yellow site with the red star is the site that we are looking at in question. As referred to in the planning committee report, there was a site that had been looked at in terms of a previous application, and then it was dismissed at appeal for development in that bluey, greeny, blobby bit. And then the allocated site, which is the red cross, you can see indicated as well in terms of other applications for development. So if you remember from the site photos, site visit this morning, I've added some site photos just for reference if we need to talk about them. So photo A is the existing adjacent development that you can see centred around a village green. B is the access to the ditch around the side of the property, and you can see on photo C the existing access, road access into Flyford Green. And you can see, well, we'll talk about it later, but that's the crossing point proposed in terms of the new pedestrian footpath going forward. And then there's photo D as well. Photo E is the ditch that runs to the rear of the existing development. And F and G, you can see the proposed site, which is very flat and a green site at the moment. You can see here in terms of the proposed site layout, just for reference, in terms of connectivity, we have the proposed footpath coming inside the site and then popping through the hedge adjacent the road, Radford Road. And then the next slide, you can see, as we saw on site, where it pops out through the hedge and adjacent the road, a new proposed footpath which would sit on the top of the existing ditch. Now, that ditch, as our drainage colleagues have done some extensive research into, we have found that as the sites drain from west to east, these are not ditches that serve to drain these sites. They are for primarily a highway function, and the proposals include culverting, piping those ditches and putting a pavement on the top. And so there's a process following planning permission, if granted, whereby an application for Section 278 works would be made to the Highways Authority for undertaking those works. So I have included for discussion house types. There's an image of the proposed carport as well. I'm just going to go quickly through these. If you need to revert back in terms of discussion, I have those available for you. Also, I've plotted out the plot numbers in relation to the previous elevation types so that you can refer to those as well. This is the correct housing mix proposed in terms of house type H, which has been a very welcome change. So now we have more bungalows on the site, which in terms of lowering the density, let me show you on the next slide. These three properties here are proposed as bungalows. Now, we don't get very many bungalows proposed in new developments. So we have here a graded escalation in terms of mass and scale. So we've got the open countryside beyond, then we've got the Suds area and the public open space here with the proposed orchard, and then 3 bungalows scaling up in size to the 2-storey dwellings and then the adjacent development. So it's a graduated edge to the development, to the village that is proposed here. And then I've given you some of the stats as well at the end. Oops. Thank you.
Very much. Mr. Broughton-Taylor, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Chairman, councillors, thank you for the opportunity to address you concerning this application. The parish council has raised a thorough objection, and I'd refer you to our full comments, which have been very severely cropped in the committee report. The developer has not undertaken any consultation with the parish council or local community. This is in contravention of Wychavon Statement of Community Involvement, paragraphs 4.8 to 4.10. This is very irregular for a development of this size and has not given the community any time to fully understand the application. There are aspects which have local implications that are not thoroughly explored. For instance, the layout and management of the proposed public open space is set for agreement under conditions 8 and 10. The village has an excellent public space as it is, and there are significant issues of concern which should be resolved before the application is determined and not left to conditions. The present public open space is expensive to maintain, and any condition should include a commuted sum for further provision at the time of determination and not left until afterwards when the opportunities for negotiation will be diminished. This needs to be done regardless of who will be responsible for the upkeep. Chairman, there have been 4 appeals within a few metres of this site which have been dismissed. These include 4 bungalows on the field opposite the proposed site, decided in April 24, an appeal for up to 5 dwellings on the same site in December 23, an appeal for 4 live-work units in 24, an appeal for 6 dwellings in early 24 on the A42, about a half a mile away. And finally, last year, the refusal of planning for housing in Dormston on 2 sites within close proximity. The Wychavon Landscape Office has consistently resisted ribbon development in this landscape, and approval of this application will undermine the decisions previously taken under the SWT policy and create an opportunity for further infill in the village. The committee report only refers to one of these appeals. It also explores many reasons why the application does not comply with the SWDP policies, but then recommends approval on the basis of the balance between the policy and the lack of the 5-year land supply. It also erroneously states that Flyford is a Category 2 village. This was true in 2016, but when the SWDP was adopted, but a review for the RSWDP published in October 22 revised this to Category 3. The committee report states that little weight should be attributed to the emerging policy, but a meeting with our chairman last week, Mr. Brace stated the exact opposite, pinning the authorities' hopes of winning an appeal against the refusal for planning permission in Upton Snosbury on the emerging policy carrying great weight. The parish council considers that the committee report presented a recommendation for approval is biased and does not reflect the reality of the space and the recent planning history. It dismisses the comments and concerns of the local residents and does not fully represent the interests of the 3rd tier of local government, which will have to deal with the unresolved issues in the future. For these reasons, we consider the application is not in an adequate state for determination and ask that it should be at least deferred for proper local consultation or simply refused. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Short, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and councillors. Many of you visited Flyford Flavel this morning, a historic village of only 127 households. We've embraced change with over 20 new homes in the last 20 years, and another 9 agreed in the revised SWDP. However, as a level 3 village, we don't have the supporting infrastructure for sustainable development, particularly local health services and sewage systems are already overstretched to capacity before any further housing increase. The proposal before you is both unwanted and unnecessary. The site has been ruled out in the Sheila process and excluded from the revised SWDP. 68 local objections have been made, not a single comment in support. Prime agricultural land in the countryside will be permanently destroyed, and in return, with no consultation, a needless and irrelevant community orchard has been proposed. The officer's report cites only one of several unsuccessful applications and appeals for a smaller housing development on the adjacent plot. The refusal was not down to a lack of a pavement on Radford Road. Having acknowledged the implication of a lack of a 5-year housing supply, the independent planning inspector stated the proposal would not provide a suitable location for housing, having regard to the development strategy for the area and to the accessibility of services and facilities. As such, it would be contrary to the aims of the framework in regard to achieving sustainable development. The harm would be significant and long-lasting and would accordingly attract substantial weight. A similar proposal for 9 houses in the neighbouring village of Dormston was refused for exactly the same reasons only 4 months ago. To ignore all this evidence and conclude that this application is well-constructed, sustainable development in a suitable location is a disgraceful travesty. Rather than emphasising the various emerging policies which are contravened, the officer claims she can only afford very limited weight to a policy which is due to be adopted next month. Why is this? Local residents are very concerned about the impartiality of the report before you and understandably dismayed to hear that groundworks contracts have allegedly already been agreed. Mr. Chairman, if you believe in the democratic process which elected you and your councillors to represent local residents, and you wish to remain credible, you must provide the protection that you've promised for local communities and refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Neil Pearce, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Once again, thank you for allowing me to address the committee today. I'd also like to thank Julie for her comprehensive report which sets out all the material planning considerations and her accurate assessment of the case. This detailed application for 14 dwellings, 4 of which will be affordable, provides a legible, high-quality, low-density, landscape-led design in a sustainable location adjoining the development boundary of a Category 2 village. As you will be aware, the tilted balance means the principle of houses on the site is supported by your officers despite it being outside the development boundary. I appreciate this is an all too familiar situation. The site is not affected by any planning constraints or footnote 7 designations, and there are no strong reasons for refusing the application. There are very limited adverse impacts resulting, and these would significantly and demonstrably be outweighed by the benefits. The proposal will change the character of the site itself from undeveloped to developed. However, it will provide a much softer landscaped approach to the village from the east through extensive areas of landscaping and open space, which will screen the current rear boundaries of the houses in Flyford Green. As is usual and necessary, the application has been scrutinised by a variety of independent experts through the consultation process. None of these experts have raised concern or objection to the proposal. However, I fully understand and appreciate the local concerns raised. We believe the site is in a sustainable location. Your officers agree, and this is reflective of other past recent decisions in the village. The homes will be safely connected to the rest of the village via new paths within the site and a new pavement on Radford Road in front of Flyford Green. And with the introduction of the Worcestershire on-demand bus service to Wychavon in August last year, there has never been a better rural public transport offer for the village. The provision of 0.69 hectares of open space, tree and hedge planting, including an orchard, which is a priority habitat, is a significant environmental and social benefit. The Highway Authority is satisfied the access is safe and there is adequate parking and visibility. Density is low, reflecting local character. There is a proven district-wide need for housing, and each town and village has a role to play in addressing this need. The scale of the proposal is respectful to the size of the village. Much has changed since the 2024 appeal decisions, and the two sites are not physically comparable. Our site is better related and better connected to the village, being on the southern side of Radford Road. Public transport provision has improved, which is a significant change, and housing land supply has declined. Whilst inspectors' decisions are material considerations, they are not binding. Each decision is based on a different set of circumstances and evidence, as is the case here. On the main local issues raised, the fact that the experts are happy with the proposal should give you and local residents comfort that this development will be delivered safely and appropriately. As set out in your officer's report, there are no technical objections to the proposed development. I fully appreciate emotions are running high, but I would ask members to follow the evidence and the expert advice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearce. The local councillor is Councillor Linda Robinson. Have you any questions to ask? You can also ask Nigel Gorski or Andrew Fell if you have any questions.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to ask Nigel a question, if I may. will I see him, or is he still behind his little screen? Just want to know he's there.
Yeah, happy to answer any questions.
You're there. Thank you, Nigel. Nigel, if I may, in relation to this slightly unusual suggestion of a pavement being laid along the road, would it be possible for it to be conditioned within the S278 that it has to be completed prior to any occupation in the development, were it to get approval? So can we guarantee we will have the pavement before we have the houses? Thank you.
I can't quite remember what the condition says at the moment, but it is typical that the footway would be put in. Doesn't necessarily have to be prior to construction, but prior to the development being occupied, so that when the first residents move in, there is already a pedestrian route for them to access local amenities. Without that, then obviously they, will inevitably use their car over prioritising active travel, which is in walking distance. So yeah, I see that as a reasonable. Yeah.
Thank you. So if I may, Chairman, I'll include a request for that within my spiel.
Okay. Have you any more questions?
No, thank you.
And I'll ask the rest of the committee if you have any specific questions to clarify. Councillor Morris.
Yeah, just a quick one for the agent. Is it correct that the community weren't consulted about this?
We didn't carry out any public consultation. We did pre-application with the district council. We obviously got a favourable response, hence the application before you today. We don't believe that this was a significant development for the village, and I have to say we genuinely weren't anticipating this level of objection to it, given that it's not a particularly sensitive site. It's a greenfield site on the edge of a sustainable settlement.
Councillor Dawes.
Thank you. This is also for Mr. Pearce. There's an awful lot of green space involved in this development, which I personally think is a bit of a waste of agricultural land. If you're going to build houses, build them. But nevertheless, it's here in front of us. Who do you propose is going to look after this and pay for it following the development being occupied?
So in terms of the quantum, your policy requires 40% of the site to be green infrastructure. I think this is about 41%. So we have to comply with policy, provide this level of open space anyway. What we do with it obviously determines what's available locally. Orchards are a priority habitat, which is why we've put that into the public open space. In the first instance, it would be offered to the parish council for adoption and maintenance. If the parish council declined, then it would be offered to the district council. If the district council declined, then it would go into a management company. If it was in public control and ownership, a commuted sum would be payable by the developer, and that would cover a 20-year management and maintenance plan. And that, I don't know what that figure would be. It's based on the nature of the public open space, but it wouldn't come to a public cost, effectively, if it was in public control.
Thank you very much. Can I have one further question?
Absolutely.
Then to the parish council, would you be happy with that 20-year sum and taking control of the public space?
I think it's interesting that the agent said they hadn't taken this into account and hadn't thought it necessary to consult with the parish council. It's clear with the other adjacent development there, as a parish council, we did take on the open space. We had a commuted sum provided for us for £90,000, but it took quite a considerable amount of negotiation to do that, and it was all done before the permission was given. So that's why I said in my comments that I think that this should not be dealt with by condition. It should be dealt with before the application is decided, because afterwards we have very little leverage in terms of that negotiation. And I can't answer a question that for a democratic body, it would have the parish council would have to be asked as a council whether they're prepared to take this on. The objector next to me also said that we can't see the point of this this public open space, which doesn't actually connect to the other one that we've got. You know, we've got a lovely village green, but then a whole load of houses and an orchard, which is not part of the village. It's outside the village.
Thank you very much. Sorry, can I have one more question there?
Yes.
You set a precedent by saying that you would consider it. Can I ask the planning officers then, is there any sort of formula? Because obviously I see that once permission's been given, the negotiation position is a lot weaker. Is there any sort of formula that can give us some sort of confidence that a reasonable sum will be offered?
Yeah, just to tell you what, in a section 106 like this, you'd have effectively a cascade approach. So in the first instance, it offers to the parish council. If they decline it, it would move to district council. If we decline it, it would then look at the management company option. So you would normally expect that structure and those discussions to happen once you sign the section 106. So it's absolutely normal that it's done this way round. In terms of the commuted sum, that would be set out with an index linked within the section 106 agreement. So it would be in there. So as things go expense over time, it would be captured that way. So it'd all be bound within the section 106 agreement. So absolutely normal way to do it. It's a shame Councillor Middleborough's not here because he was a big advocate of having that cascade clause in the section 106. That's what we've started doing because it was something that members of committee found desirable. And as a matter of course, that has already been discussed in terms of if it moves forward, in terms of parameters of a section 106, that cascade approach and those commuted sums would be caught by that.
Yeah, so, but you didn't quite. That's great, but the confidence that the sum that will be offered can be made to be realistic. How does that work?
Yeah, that would be in the legal mechanism as well. It would be depending on what the offer is. There are effectively a table of figures with multipliers and then index linked. So it would be a sufficient sum of money, and in this instance, we're looking at a 20-year management period if that was applied. So, I mean, it's robustly enforced through a legal agreement. We can't get any tighter than that. The schedule of that, and it would have to be signed by the relevant parties, but that would all be clearly set out within that and signed off.
Thank you.
Councillor Sims.
Thank you. There's an emphasis in the revised MPPF for energy efficiency. Can I ask Mr Pearce and perhaps Julie subsequently as to what type of energy you will be using?
At this stage, it's likely to be solar panels. There may be air source heat pumps as well. The energy statement, I haven't got it in front of me, but I think it was something like about 18% through renewables, which is getting very close to your emerging policy. In fact, I think building regs now exceeds your own policy, so they would have to provide a significant amount of renewable energy through those measures.
Any further questions? You want to ask another question?
Sorry, Chairman. It's about the woodland, the proposed woodland. Is this scheduled to have public access, or is it a private woodland? Because we're asking the parish council to perhaps contribute towards it, but do the villagers actually get any benefit from it?
Is that the orchard in the public open space, in that north bit?
It would have public access.
Here, yes.
Thank you. I thought it would. I just wanted to check.
Are there any more? Yes, Councillor Adams.
Yes, thank you, Mr Chairman. Can I just have some clarity on page 107 on 4 about the parish council there objecting? Just some clarity about, it says in the last about the application being invalid, citing the revised South Worcestershire and not being consulted. It's unusual to find that in the committee report, so if that could be cleared up for me.
Come back to you in a minute.
I think what I don't want to put words in the parish council's mouth. They've got the document before them, but basically, I think the nub of that objection point is because it's not an allocated site in the SWDPR or emerging plan. On that basis, the council consider it's invalid. I don't think they mean invalid in terms of a technical application, but effectively it shouldn't come forward. So they can correct me if I'm wrong on that interpretation.
So can I come back, Mr. So the council are happy that it's come forward?
It's come forward as a site in response to our housing land supply position, but in officers' judgment, it's in a sustainable location, so that aligned with our housing land supply permission is why you have the recommendation before you in terms of the principal issues.
Thank you.
Are there any more technical, to clarify any questions with the speakers? No? Thank you. Then in that case, thank you for speaking, all three of you, and would you like to return to your seats? Thank you. And when that's done, I'll ask Councillor Robinson if you'd like to address this committee.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application has understandably caused considerable concern amongst local residents, and I'd like to thank those of them who've taken time out to come and join us today. I have represented Flyford Flavel since 2007, and beyond that it was Councillor Adams who represented them, so we're all present. And in that time, I have witnessed a considerable increase in traffic flow in that area. I'm also a school governor at Flyford Flavel School, and my granddaughter attended the school there, so I know how well the congestion issues at school drop-off and pick-up times affect it. Flyford, to my knowledge, is still or is becoming a Category 3 village, and with very limited public bus transport. I think we're now saying one a day, and the demand-led bus, if it gets to go there, which it doesn't at the moment. Many concerns are regularly raised at their parish council meetings re highway safety and speeding along the Radford Road, together with some noting of accidents and near misses. This road is regularly used by milk tankers, large agricultural machinery, towing even wider machinery, and school buses, and is also used as a rat run to get round the A422 at times. Drivers often speed up away from the school in frustration at having been held up by parked cars. This will not change as there is no parking provision available for the school. A site further towards the entry of the village, or the centre of the village, was recently refused at appeal, and there have been others. Members will have seen today the VAS sign I had installed on the verge proposed for a footpath, which frequently records excesses over the 30-mile-an-hour limit. I have my concerns over the proposed installation of the pavement with culverts over the ditch in the existing grass verge. Thank you to Nigel for his response, but I would like it noted that I would be asking, if the application were approved, that the S278 could be conditioned to be completed prior to any occupation. And this is a rural area, and I fear the pavement will only serve to urbanise it, detracting from its rural character. And we don't normally do this unless it's directly in front of the houses being developed. This is, off to the side. I welcome the inclusion of 3 bungalows on the approach to the village, but would also ask if there could be some control as to the ridge height of the other properties so that they don't dominate the entrance into the village. This is a gateway site. And finally, this proposed is contrary to SWDP2 because it's outside the rural settlement of Flyford Flavel in open countryside. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll open it up to the committee for debate. I think most of you went this morning at a site visit. Could I have any comments, please? Councillor Sims.
Thank you. I think for me that these small sites are far more preferable, and if we have to have development, and we do, that I prefer these little small sites than the 30 or even more sites. So, yeah.
Thank you. I'm sure there are more comments than this. Councillor Morris, are you saying something? No? No, you're obviously not. Perhaps you were just thinking. Councillor Tucker, is it? Are you, Councillor Ward? You.
In the absence of any other speakers, I do feel, Chairman, that this application is an unwanted and an unwarranted extension of the village into open countryside in and extending it inappropriately out along a rural road, which, as has been stated, does have substantial traffic issues along it. As soon as one leaves the village, past the green, one immediately is in very undisturbed rural countryside. It has been said that this is an infill site because there is a long-standing property just on the right-hand side of the photograph or the plan that we see there. That property, I know, has been there for at least 50 years and really is an isolated property, and there's no way, yes, that property, there's no way that this can be considered as an infill between the relatively new Flyford Green and that property. I believe that this is an inappropriate extension into rural countryside, into the rural countryside, and should not be supported. On a technical issue, on the drainage issues, I'm not at all happy with the proposals given in the water management statement or the drainage strategy for the attenuation basin, which to me is merely paying lip service to the requirements of the national standards. But I do note that that we have a condition which will require the details to be provided, and I hope that the designers will sharpen their pencils and get much more aware of what they should be providing in a sustainable drainage system than the proposals that they have. But generally speaking, Chairman, I can't favour this application.
Thank you. Councillor Dawes.
Thank you, Chair. Flyford Flavel's a village that's very dear to me. I went to school there, my daughters went to school there, my grandchildren go to school there. I find it difficult to think of more houses being built there. But there again, I was very much against the Flyford Green when that was put up. And I think that's done the village a pile of good. And I think unless the village grows, things like amenities like bus services get stripped away from them. They're very fortunate. They've got a school, they've got 2 thriving pubs and a shop. I think unless they grow a little bit organically, they will die and shrivel. And I think a lot of villages are suffering from that at the moment. So I think, on balance, I will go with the officer's recommendation. But I'll wait to see what anybody else has to say.
Thank you. Councillor Dawes. Councillor Kersey. Sorry, I thought you had your hand up. No, it's all right. Councillor Sims.
Is Councillor Dawes making a proposal? If not, I will make a proposal to go with officer's recommendation for approval.
Thank you. Councillor Morris.
Yeah, I will comment. I think, well, I hope the residents can understand that none of us like being put in this position, but we are in this position and we do have to make a decision. I'm sure that the Green wasn't a very popular site when it was first proposed, and I can remember cycling past there and thinking, oh gosh, this is a bit of a shock. But I'm sure many of the residents that we met this morning actually live in that area, the new area of Flyford, and I'm sure they're very happy now living in Flyford Flavel, so I'm minded to agree reluctantly with the vibe I'm getting from here, is that none of us want this, but we really don't have much of a choice. And the reality is that whilst I can see the application on the opposite side of the road, I can see 100% why that was rejected, but I can't actually see a legal reason for rejecting this application, however unpopular that decision might be. So are we waiting for another second? Are you needing seconding? I'm prepared to second the application in line with officer's recommendation.
Councillor Birch, followed by Councillor Dawes.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to sort of come on the back of some of the points made by Councillor Robinson. I too had some concerns about it, and almost Nick Dork's point backed that up for me. They do have 2 thriving pubs, but I think what that also shows is, they've also got a very popular venue in Toast up the road in Flyford Flavel, which I know many people in Wychavon go and visit. But ultimately, what it shows is every time I've been to Flyford Flavel, is it's very busy. I'd say it possibly shows more a village on the brink when it comes to amenities. And my concern would be that additional housing without that additional infrastructure will push them from being on the brink to very much over it. A number of the objections raised were on the basis of parking by the school, and that is a real concern. And also the road infrastructure within Flyford Flavel, that's a very quick road that new residents in that development will be coming onto in a very rural area. The Flyford Green development is a very nice looking development. I think ultimately it has complemented the village to a degree. I don't think that this one is designed quite as well as that one, as the Flyford Green development is. And I don't think it connects to the village quite as well as the development next to it does either. So ultimately, I don't think that even if this was a suitable site, that the development itself really serves the village in the best way in terms of its design. But overall, I have legitimate concerns over how viable it is to continue building in Flyford Flavel without the additional infrastructure that the village is calling for.
Councillor Dawes.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that we need to ensure we have that condition present regarding the pavements being complete before occupation.
Thank you.
Just to draw your attention to, there is a condition 5 which relates to before the approved development commences, a detailed schedule of works for the design for the site access works at Bradford Road, including pedestrian footway provision, and it also talks about a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. So I believe it's captured by that, but as officers we'll take it away and ensure that that captures the delivery of that. And the only other bit I was going to mention, because it was also mentioned about levels by...
that's in section 6.
And that's captured by 6, but we will just review to check, and we've got, I think the resolution allows for some officers to tweak conditions if necessary, so we'll take that away, and if it needs tweaking, we'll make sure that's addressed as well. Thank you.
Councillor Sims.
Thank you. Just quickly, looking at that diagram, Julie, has anyone asked whether there could be a connection from the right-hand side development to the other side, a walkway at the top end?
So if I can show you with my cursor, here there is...
No, up top. No, on the new development site.
Hang on.
Coming up south. From here. Yeah, down a bit further. Down. Yes. Is there...
Connect through.
Private gardens. It's private gardens.
It's gardens. I don't think you can walk through people's gardens, Councillor Sims.
Absolutely. I'm just asking, is there a question? I'm not too Paul's suggesting, I'm going to put somebody's garden, is there a place that there is not on private that you could actually access? Oh, sorry. They can actually access. Is there? I just wonder, I'm just asking.
So...
Well, but then you have a link. I'm just
You're saying link is not sufficient.
No, I'm just asking a question because there could be a link too, because quite often in developments...
It is in the question department, but
right,
can you answer that one?
It sort of came to me.
Just quickly, so in terms of planning applications that come before us, we do consider connectivity as one of the first outset principles. So in terms of looking at where, for example, we've got access to land owned by the highways, and public rights of way and land that we could have control of that making connections. In this instance, even if that were third-party land that were available, those discussions haven't taken place and that hasn't been explored, and it's not something that is proposed in front of us with this planning application. So, no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
But that's
you.
a shame.
Yes.
Thank you for the question anyway. We any more comments at all? Councillor Adams. It's wavy. I think you've probably gathered, for those people who've come from Flavel, that this has been a particularly difficult one for the committee. Some of you have been quite pointed in that you have, I think, Wychavon are at fault in bringing this forward, but actually we are under, well, all local planning authorities are under considerable pressure to produce houses, in particular South Worcestershire. You probably gather that it was 14,000, it's now 26,000 houses for 2041. So there's pressure from all sides to put houses, and all villages have had to endure a few houses extra than they would want to. And this particular application has been, I know, difficult for the committee to reconcile, as you probably gathered. So I've said that. Without any more ado, if there's nobody else here, are you waving or? So I did bring you in, but.
There we go. I wanted to speak because Councillor Robinson named me. I did represent the area for 16 years when I was a county councillor and was proud to do it. I met a lot of good, honest people about there. And I will say that, and I make that remark because nobody has been in touch with me. I say that before I say anything, because you might think I've been in conversation with anybody. I've sat on this corner 26 years on planning applications, so I know how people feel at different times, and it is a very difficult time. The main thing, as I say to the residents here this afternoon, it's been a difficult time. In all those years I've been here, it's never been so difficult as it is at the moment. I long for the time when I can vote over the South Worcestershire Development Plan review. If this application was in another 12 months or even less, I think it might have a different outcome, which I believe will be this afternoon. A lot of good comments. I remember the Green being put together, and I'm proud that I represented the area because I think that's worked out really, really well. But this addition now outside the boundary development doesn't do anything for me. It really doesn't. Is it necessary, all that? I haven't got good planning reasons to propose refusal if I could get somebody to back me this afternoon. But I do feel strongly, as the people of Wychavon are very strong over this. Do you know, I stood on that ground this morning. I apologise I didn't go to the first. I had to go out to Littleworth, as did Linda, over a flooding issue by the school there we're trying to resolve. But when I came back and stood on the side of that road, and I looked over the hedge, and then I looked what was in front of me, that ditch. There was no water in that ditch, and what a beautiful field there. For goodness sake, we must stand firm and try and hold on to some good agricultural land. In years to come, when I'm dead and gone, the nation won't feed in, and I thought that was a good field, and it should be recognised and kept as it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Adams. Are there any more comments before we go to vote? I had a proposal from Councillor Sims and seconded by Councillor Morris for approval in line. Rachel, would you take it over? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. All those in favour of approving this application in accordance with officer recommendation, please raise your cards. 6. All those against? 1, 2, 3, 4 against. Any abstentions? 3 abstentions. Motion is carried, Chair.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming, everybody, and have a good evening, and we'll see you at the next Planning Committee meeting.